In the final episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which aired on July 19th, 2008, Zuko walks into the prison cell where his father sits in chains, and he asks him a question. The question is not about the war. It is not about the throne. It is not about the fate of nations or the future of the world. It is about his mother. Where is she? What happened to her? And Ozai, the dethroned Fire Lord, the man who burned his own son's face in front of a crowd, leans forward and the scene cuts away. The show ends, the credits roll, and Zuko never gets an answer. Neither do you. That is not the only question Avatar leaves unanswered. It is not even the strangest one. It is simply the one the show chose to ask out loud in its final minutes, as if to remind you that a story can be complete and still unfinished, that a world can be saved and still full of shadows, that a war can end and still leave behind more questions than it resolves. This is about those questions. The ones the show planted and never harvested. The ones that sit in the margins of the narrative like seeds that were never given water. There are 10 of them, and each one is stranger than the last, and none of them have ever been fully answered. Before we go further, subscribing helps keep long-form content like this coming, and it costs nothing. Now, let us begin with the most fundamental mystery of all. The first of these mysteries is also the oldest. It begins before the show begins, before the opening narration, before the map of the 4 nations appears on screen. It begins with a boy in an iceberg. Aang was 12 years old when he ran away from the Southern Air Temple. He had just been told he was the Avatar. The monks had decided to separate him from Monk Gyatso, the only person who treated him like a child instead of a destiny. The Council of Elders at the Southern Air Temple made this decision sometime in late Zero BG, and their reasoning was that Gyatso's affection was interfering with Aang's training. They planned to send him to the Eastern Air Temple, where he would train under different masters away from the only home he had ever known. So Aang ran. He took Appa and flew into a storm over the open ocean. The storm pulled them under, and in the moment before drowning, Aang entered the Avatar state involuntarily. The Avatar state encased him and Appa in a sphere of ice, and that sphere sank to the bottom of the ocean near the South Pole, where it remained for 100 years. Here is the mystery. How did he survive? The show offers no explanation. Not a throwaway line, not a flashback, not a single scene in which a character asks the question and receives an answer. Aang was frozen in ice for a century, and when Katara and Sokka found him in the first episode, which aired on February 21st, 2005, he was alive, not aged, not injured, not even particularly disoriented. He woke up, saw Katara, and asked if she wanted to go penguin sledding. The Avatar state is powerful. It is the combined knowledge and ability of every previous Avatar, channeled through a single body. But nowhere in the series, or in its sequel, The Legend of Korra, is it established that the Avatar state can sustain biological life for 100 years. The Avatar state enhances bending. It does not stop cellular decay. It does not prevent dehydration or starvation or the slow entropy of a body without oxygen. And yet Aang survived, perfectly preserved, as if time itself had been paused around him. Some fans have theorized that the iceberg functioned as a form of suspended animation, similar to cryogenic preservation. The ice kept Aang's body at a temperature low enough to halt biological processes, and the Avatar state maintained some form of spiritual energy that kept his consciousness intact. This is plausible, but it raises more questions than it answers. How did the Avatar state know to do this? Was it an automatic response? A survival mechanism built into the Avatar spirit itself? And if so, why has no other Avatar ever used it? In 10,000 years of Avatar history, across hundreds of lifetimes, no other Avatar has ever been frozen in ice and survived. Aang is the only one, and the show never tells you why. There is another layer to this mystery that most people miss. When Aang was in the iceberg, he was glowing. His eyes and his arrow tattoos emitted a steady blue-white light for the entire 100 years. This means the Avatar state was active, continuously, for a century. Every previous Avatar was lending their energy to keep this boy alive. Roku, Koshi, Karuk, Yangchen, all of them pouring their spiritual energy into Aang's frozen body for 100 years, without interruption. The energy cost of this must have been extraordinary, and the show implies through dialogue in Book 2 that Aang's time in the iceberg is the reason he is the last airbender. Because the Avatar was missing for 100 years, the world had no one to maintain the balance. The Fire Nation attacked, the Air Nomads were exterminated, the Water Tribes were besieged, and the Earth Kingdom was slowly consumed. All because a 12-year-old boy ran away and the universe conspired to keep him alive in a block of ice rather than let him drown. The mystery is not just how he survived, it is why the Avatar spirit chose preservation over reincarnation. If Aang had drowned, the Avatar would have been reborn into the Water Tribe, A new Avatar could have grown up, learned the elements, and potentially stopped the war decades earlier. Instead, the Avatar spirit kept Aang alive, frozen and useless, for 100 years. It chose to preserve this specific boy rather than start over with someone new. And no one in the show ever asks why. No one ever wonders if the Avatar spirit made the wrong choice. No one ever considers the possibility that 100 years of war and genocide were the price of keeping one child alive. This is the kind of mystery that sits underneath the entire series like a fault line. You can watch all 61 episodes without thinking about it. But once you notice it, it changes the weight of everything. Every scene with Aang carries the silent question of whether the universe made the right call, whether he was worth it, whether any single life is worth 100 years of suffering. The show's answer, delivered through 3 seasons of storytelling, is yes. Aang is worth it. He is the one who ends the war without killing. He is the one who finds another way. He is the one who proves that the Avatar spirit's gamble paid off. But the gamble itself, the decision to freeze rather than release, remains unexplained. It is the foundation of the entire series, and it is built on a question that has no answer. The second mystery takes us deeper into the show's history, past the borders of nations and into the space between the human world and something older. There is a spirit called Ko. You meet him in Book 1, Chapter 20, which aired on December 2nd, 2005. Aang travels to the spirit world to find the identities of the moon and ocean spirits, and he is directed to Ko by a previous avatar. The scene that follows is one of the most unsettling in the entire series. Ko lives beneath an ancient tree in the spirit world. He has the body of an enormous centipede, segmented and dark, and where his face should be, there is a face that does not belong to him. It changes. One moment it is the face of a woman, then an owl, then something else entirely. Ko collects faces. He steals them from anyone who shows emotion in his presence. If you smile, if you frown, if you show even the slightest flicker of fear or surprise or sadness, he takes your face, permanently. Aang navigates this encounter by keeping his expression perfectly neutral, a performance that is remarkable for a 12-year-old boy who has never met an ancient face-stealing spirit before. Ko gives him the information he needs. The moon spirit is a koi fish named Tui, and the ocean spirit is a koi fish named La, and they swim in a pool at the North Pole. But Ko also tells Aang something else. He says they have met before, in a previous life. He says he stole the face of someone connected to one of Aang's past lives. And then the scene ends, and Ko is never seen again in the original series. The mystery of Ko is layered. The show tells you through supplementary material and through the legend of Korra that Ko is the son of the Mother of Faces, a spirit who has the ability to give faces to living things. Ko can steal them. Mother and son, creation and destruction, 2 sides of the same spiritual coin. Ko was born thousands of years before the events of the series, and at some point he became estranged from his mother and began collecting faces, not out of hunger, but out of something closer to longing. The face Ko stole from Aang's past life belonged to a woman named Umi. She was the lover of Avatar Kuruk, the water tribe avatar who preceded Yang Chen in the cycle. Kuruk was, by most accounts, a careless avatar. He surfed, he traveled, he neglected his duties, and Ko punished him by stealing Umi's face, an act that destroyed Kuruk and sent him spiraling into a desperate futile search through the spirit world that consumed the rest of his short life. But here is what the show never explains. Why Umi? Why did Ko target the woman Kuruk loved? The show implies it was punishment for Kuruk's arrogance, but the nature of that arrogance is never specified in the original series. What did Kuruk do that was so offensive to Ko that the spirit's response was to steal the face of an innocent woman? And why is face stealing the punishment? What is the connection between showing emotion and losing your face? What does a face mean in the spirit world, where physical form is fluid and identity is not tied to a body? The rules of Ko's power are never explained. You know the trigger, any display of emotion, but you do not know the mechanism. You do not know if Ko chooses to steal a face, or if it happens automatically. You do not know if the stolen face retains consciousness. You do not know if the victim is aware, trapped behind a blank surface, feeling everything but unable to express anything. You do not know if the process is reversible. You do not know if Ko can be killed, or if killing him would free the faces, or if the faces would simply cease to exist. Ko is mentioned once more in the original series, indirectly, when Roku warns Aang to be careful in the spirit world. But his story is never resolved. He remains in his tree, beneath the roots, wearing someone else's face, waiting for the next visitor who makes the mistake of feeling something in his presence. He is one of the most terrifying characters in the history of animated television, and his entire existence is a mystery that the show plants in Book 1 and never returns to. The third mystery is the one the show asks out loud, the one that hangs in the air during the final scene, the one that has haunted fans since July 19th, 2008. What happened to Zuko's mother? The show gives you fragments. You know that Ursa, Zuko's mother, was a noble woman from the Fire Nation colonies who married Prince Ozai. You know that she was present during Zuko's childhood, that she was kind and protective, that she was the one person in the royal family who showed Zuko unconditional love. You know that she disappeared one night when Zuko was young, and that the next morning Fire Lord Azulon was dead and Ozai had taken the throne. The implication is clear even to a child watching the show for the first time. Ursa did something. She made a deal, or committed an act, that removed Azulon and put Ozai in power, and the price of that act was her own banishment. But the show never confirms this. It never shows you what happened. It never lets Ursa speak for herself. In the episode Zuko Alone, which aired on May 12, 2006, you see Ursa's last night in the palace through Zuko's memory. She wakes him in the middle of the night. She tells him that everything she has done to protect him. She tells him never to forget who he is. And then she leaves. Zuko wakes up the next morning and she is gone. This is all the show gives you. A mother who vanished, a son who never stopped looking, and a question that the series finale deliberately leaves unanswered, as if to say that some mysteries are more powerful when they remain mysteries, that the ache of not knowing is itself a kind of truth. The writers have spoken about this. Aaron Ahaz, head writer of the series, has said in interviews that they had planned to resolve Ursa's story in a potential fourth season, or a movie that never materialized. Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, the show's creators, eventually told Ursa's story in a graphic novel called The Search, published in 2013. But the animated series itself, the version of the story that most people know, ends without an answer. And there is something powerful about that. The show understands that Zuko's relationship with his mother is not a plot thread. It is a wound. And wounds do not close neatly. They do not resolve in the final episode. They remain open and aching long after the story ends. The mystery of Ursa is not a failure of storytelling. It is a choice. The show chose to let the wound stay open, to let Zuko's question echo into silence, to let the audience carry the same ache that Zuko carries. But the mystery itself remains, and for the millions of people who watched the finale and never read the comics, it will always remain. A mother, a vanishing, a question asked in a prison cell to a man who may or may not have answered. And a cut to black. The fourth mystery is quieter. It does not involve spirits or mothers or iceberg miracles. It involves something the show tells you happened, something it shows you the aftermath of, and then refuses to explain in any detail. The Air Nomad genocide. You know the broad strokes. Fire Lord Sozin, empowered by the comet that would later bear his name, launched a coordinated assault on the 4 air temples simultaneously. The attack took place in 0 AG, 100 years before the events of the series. The goal was to kill the Avatar, who Sozin knew had been reborn among the Air Nomads. The Air Nomads were pacifists. They did not have an army. They did not have walls or fortresses or weapons of war. They had bending and philosophy and a way of life built around spiritual harmony. And they were wiped out, every single one of them, except Aang, who was at the bottom of the ocean in a block of ice. The show presents this as established history. It is the inciting event of the entire narrative. It is the reason Aang is the last airbender. It is the reason the world is out of balance. And it is, when you stop to think about it, deeply mysterious. Consider the logistics. The Air Nomads lived at the 4 air temples, each located on a remote mountain peak. The Southern Air Temple, which you see in Book 1, Chapter 3, aired on February 25, 2005, is built into the side of a mountain so tall that it is above the clouds. The Northern Air Temple is similarly inaccessible. The Eastern and Western Air Temples are built on cliff faces and underneath rock overhangs. These are places designed to be reached only by flight. They are natural fortresses against any ground-based assault. The Fire Nation does not have aircraft. Not in Sozin's time. The war balloons and airships that appear later in the series were developed decades after the genocide, based on technology that did not exist when the temples were attacked. So, how did the Fire Nation get up there? How did an army of firebenders, empowered by the comet but still bound by gravity, reach 4 temples that were built specifically to be unreachable by anyone who could not fly? The show gives you one answer, implicitly. The comet, Sozin's comet, enhances firebending to an extraordinary degree. And in the series finale, you see firebenders using the comet's power to propel themselves through the air on jets of flame. Ozai flies during the finale. Azula flies. Zheng flies. It is possible that during the original Comet-enhanced assault, Fire Nation soldiers were able to use their amplified bending to reach the temples by air, flying on columns of fire like rockets. But even this explanation raises questions. The air nomads were not helpless. They were benders. Every single air nomad was a bender, a fact that is unique among the four nations. The show establishes this in Book 1, and airbending is, in many ways, the most versatile of the four elements. Airbenders can fly with gliders, create devastating vortexes, suffocate opponents by removing air from their lungs, though this darker application is only explored in The Legend of Korra, an entire civilization of benders fighting on their home terrain, at altitude, where the air is thinnest and airbending is strongest, should have had an enormous defensive advantage. And yet they were exterminated, completely. The show offers one visual clue. When Aang visits the Southern Air Temple in Book 1 and discovers the skeleton of monk Gyatso, Gyatso's body is surrounded by the bodies of Fire Nation soldiers, dozens of them. Gyatso, who was an elderly monk, a pacifist, a man who preferred pie-eating contests to combat, killed dozens of Comet-enhanced firebenders before he fell. This tells you that the air nomads fought. They were pacifists, but they fought when fighting was the only option. And they fought well. So how were they defeated? The show has never answered this question in full. Some fans have pointed to the supplementary material, which reveals that Sozin did not rely solely on the initial assault. After the temples fell, some air nomads survived. They scattered into the wider world, hiding among other nations. Sozin anticipated this. He created false safe houses, furnished with air nomad relics, and spread rumors through the Earth Kingdom that these were sanctuaries. The surviving airbenders came out of hiding, went to the safe houses, and were killed. It was a systematic, deliberate campaign of extermination that continued for years after the initial attack. This is one of the darkest pieces of lore in the entire franchise. A children's show on Nickelodeon included in its background mythology a detailed account of how a genocidal leader used honeypot traps to lure survivors of a massacre out of hiding and murder them. The show aired this content in 2005 on a network whose primary audience was children aged 6 to 14. And it did not flinch. But even with the safe house explanation, the mystery persists. How thorough was the extermination? The air nomads were a global civilization with 4 temples spread across the world. They were nomadic by nature, travelers who moved between temples and visited other nations. Some of them must have been traveling when the attack happened. Some must have been in the Earth Kingdom or the Water Tribes, far from any temple, far from any Fire Nation army. Did Sozin find all of them? Every last one. In a world without modern communication, without satellites, without databases or surveillance networks, how did the Fire Nation track down every single airbender on the planet? The answer, according to the show, is that they did. That the extermination was complete. That Aang is the last airbender, full stop. But The Legend of Korra complicates this by introducing harmonic convergence, which grants airbending to a number of non-benders in 171 AG. And it reveals that sky bison, the companion animals of the air nomads that were believed to be extinct along with their masters, survived in hidden herds. If the bison survived, the question becomes sharper. Did any air nomads survive too? Did any of them hide successfully, live out quiet lives in Earth Kingdom villages, never bending in public, never revealing what they were, dying of old age as the last secret airbenders in the world? The show says no. The show says Aang was the only one, but the show also left enough ambiguity, enough gaps in the timeline, enough unexplored corners of the world that the question can never be fully closed. The air nomad genocide is a mystery not because the show refuses to address it, but because the scope of what it describes is so vast that no amount of explanation could ever feel complete. There will always be a gap. There will always be one more mountain, one more island, one more hidden valley where someone might have survived. And that gap is perhaps intentionally the most human thing about the show's treatment of genocide. Real genocides leave gaps too. Real histories have survivors who were never counted, stories that were never told, lives that slip through the cracks of systematic destruction. The show does not sanitize this. It does not give you a clean number and a neat resolution. It gives you a devastation so large that its edges cannot be mapped. And it lets you sit with that. The 5th mystery concerns a man with no name. You meet him in Book 3. He never speaks. He is enormous, bald, and has a third eye tattooed on his forehead. Zuko hires him to kill the Avatar, and he pursues Team Avatar across several episodes with a single terrifying ability. He can create explosions with his mind. The show calls him nothing. The characters do not know his name. Sokka eventually nicknames him Combustion Man, and the name sticks because there is nothing else to call him. He is introduced in The Headband, which aired on September 28, 2007. And he dies in The Western Air Temple, which aired on July 14, 2008, when Sokka's boomerang strikes him in the forehead and his next attempt to fire his beam explodes in his own face. In between, he is one of the most mysterious and frightening antagonists in the series. And the mystery is not who he is, it is what he is. Combustion bending, as fans have come to call it, is never explained in the show, not once. No character discusses what it is, how it works, where it comes from, or how many people can do it. It is presented as an anomaly, a firebender who can channel his chi through a point on his forehead and create concentrated beams of energy that explode on impact. It is not standard firebending. It does not use the hands or the feet. It does not require the broad, aggressive martial arts movements that other firebenders use. It is something else, something stranger. The show's official website, which existed during the original run, provided a small amount of background. It said that Combustion Man discovered his abilities at a young age, and that before mastering them, he accidentally blew off his own right arm and right leg, which were replaced with metal prosthetic. This detail is visible in the show if you look carefully. His right arm and right leg are metal. He lost them to his own power before he learned to control it. It did not say whether it is a genetic trait, a learned skill, a mutation, or a spiritual gift. It did not say how many combustion benders exist or have existed. It did not say whether the third eye tattoo is functional, marking the chakra point through which the energy is channeled, or whether it is decorative. It gave you a name that is not a name, a power that is not explained, and a background that raises more questions than it answers. The Legend of Korra introduced a second combustion bender, a woman named P. Lee, who appeared in Book 3 of that series. P. Lee had the same third eye tattoo, the same explosive ability, and slightly more backstory. She was imprisoned by a warlord as a child and forced to use her abilities as a weapon. This tells you that combustion bending is not unique to one person. It is a rare but reproducible ability. But Korra does not explain it either. Two combustion benders across two series, and neither show tells you what they are. The Kyoshi novels, published after both shows ended, offer the most detail. They reveal that combustion bending is not inherited. It is developed through intense training programs that involve, among other things, extended submersion in water. The implication is that combustion benders are made, not born. They are products of a specific, grueling process that only a small number of firebenders survive. But even the novels leave gaps. Why water submersion? What is the connection between nearly drowning and learning to fire explosive energy from your forehead? What is the failure rate of the training? How many people die trying to become what Combustion Man became? The mystery of combustion bending is the mystery of a power that exists without context. The show introduces it, uses it, and discards it without ever integrating it into the larger framework of bending. It is an outlier, a wild card, a reminder that the world of Avatar is larger and stranger than any single story can contain, and that there are powers in this world that the protagonists do not understand, and that the narrative does not have time to explain. And there is something unsettling about that, because the show is meticulous about its bending systems. It establishes rules. Waterbending draws from Tai Chi, earthbending draws from Hungar, firebending draws from Northern Shaolin, airbending draws from Baguazhang. Every element has a martial arts foundation, a philosophy, a spiritual framework. Except combustion bending. Combustion bending has nothing. It is raw power without philosophy, destruction without form, violence without art. And the show lets it exist that way, unexplained and uncontained, as if to acknowledge that not everything in the world can be understood. Some things simply are. The sixth mystery is the one the show introduces in its final hours and never looks back on. Energy bending. In the four-part series finale, Sozin's Comet, Aang faces a crisis that is as much philosophical as it is strategic. He must defeat Fire Lord Ozai. The world expects him to kill Ozai. Roku tells him. Kyoshi tells him. Even Yang Chen, the air nomad avatar who came before him, tells him that the duty of the avatar transcends personal morality. But Aang is an air nomad. He was raised in a culture of non-violence. He does not want to kill anyone. And the show, remarkably, does not treat this as a weakness. It treats it as the central dramatic question of the finale. The resolution comes from a lion turtle. In Book 3, Chapter 19, The Old Masters, which aired as part of the four-part finale on July 19, 2008, Aang is drawn to a mysterious island that turns out to be a living creature, a lion turtle. The last lion turtle in the world, an animal so old that it predates the Four Nations, predates the Avatar cycle, predates bending itself. The lion turtle speaks to Aang in a voice that sounds like the earth, thinking, and it says something that changes everything. In the era before the Avatar, the people did not bend the elements. They bent the energy within themselves. And then the lion turtle touches Aang's chest and his forehead, and Aang gains the ability to energy bend, to reach into another person's body and bend the energy that flows through them, to take their bending away without killing them, to end Ozai's threat without ending his life. This is the moment that saves the series, morally and narratively. It allows Aang to remain true to his values. It gives the show a resolution that is not compromise but transcendence. And it is, by any honest analysis, the biggest unsolved mystery in the entire franchise. Because the show never tells you what energy bending actually is. It never tells you how it works. It never tells you why the lion turtle had this knowledge. It never tells you why the lion turtle chose this moment, this avatar, this crisis, to share it. It never tells you why no previous avatar was ever taught energy bending, despite the fact that previous avatars also faced moral dilemmas about killing. It never tells you how the lion turtle knew Aang would need this ability. It never tells you what it means to bend the energy within yourself. The lion turtle gives Aang a warning. To bend another's energy, your own spirit must be unbendable. Otherwise, you will be corrupted and destroyed. This is the only rule, the only limitation. And it is as vague as it is profound. What does unbendable mean? Is it a measure of willpower, of spiritual purity, of moral certainty? Could Ozai's spirit have overwhelmed Aang's? The finale implies yes. It shows Ozai's energy briefly overtaking Aang's before Aang pushes back. But if Aang had failed, what would have happened? Would Aang have died? Would he have become Ozai? Would the energy bending have destroyed them both? There is also the question of the lion turtles themselves. The legend of Korra expands on their role significantly, revealing that in the era of Raava, tens of thousands of years before Aang's time, humans lived on the backs of lion turtles. The lion turtles granted humans the ability to bend elements temporarily to protect themselves when they ventured into the spirit wilds. This is the origin of bending itself. The lion turtles were the original source. But this raises more questions. If the lion turtles could grant bending, could they also take it away? Was energy bending simply the original function, the act of giving and removing elemental abilities? And if so, why did the knowledge of energy bending disappear? The lion turtle tells Aang that energy bending predates elemental bending. This means that at some point in history, the entire human race could energy bend. And then they forgot. Or they stopped. Or they lost the ability. Why? What happened that made humanity abandon the most fundamental form of bending in favor of the 4 elemental disciplines? The show does not answer any of this. It introduces energy bending in its final hour, uses it to resolve its central conflict, and then closes. The Legend of Korra gives Aang and later Korra the ability to use energy bending as a tool, to remove bending from criminals, to restore bending to those who lost it, but it never explains the mechanics. It never tells you what energy is. Is it chi? Is it the life force? Is it the soul? Is it something the show has no word for? Energy bending is the most powerful ability in the Avatar universe, and it is the least understood. It is the answer to the show's hardest question, and it is itself a question that has no answer. It exists in the space between what the show tells you and what it cannot or will not explain. And it is beautiful in that space, not despite the mystery, but because of it. Because the show trusts you to accept that some solutions come from places you cannot map. That some wisdom is older than understanding. That sometimes the answer to an impossible question is a creature as old as the world, offering its gift without explanation, and trusting you to be worthy of it. The 7th mystery lives not at the beginning or the end of the story, but at its edges, in the space after the final frame. In the future, the show chose not to show you. What happened to Azula? Azula is 14 years old when the show ends. She is 14, and she has already conquered Ba Sing Se, the greatest fortress in the world. She has already manipulated her way into the Earth King's trust. She has already shot the Avatar with lightning and nearly killed him. She has already been betrayed by her 2 closest friends, Mai and Ty Lee, and responded to that betrayal not with grief, but with paranoia so consuming that she banished her entire staff, her guards, her advisors, everyone, and sat alone in the throne room talking to a hallucination of her dead mother. The last time you see Azula in the animated series, she is chained to a grate in the courtyard of the Fire Nation Palace, sobbing after Zuko and Katara defeat her in the Agni Kai. It is one of the most devastating images in the show. A 14-year-old girl, her hair tangled, her face contorted, breathing fire and screaming, alone, completely and irreversibly alone, chained to the ground while the world celebrates around her. The show does not tell you what happens next. It does not tell you if she goes to prison, if she receives help. if she ever speaks to Zuko again, if she recovers, if she escapes. If she dies young, it simply leaves her there on the ground, burning and breaking, and moves on to the final scene of the series, which is a kiss on a balcony and a sunset. The comics address this. In The Promise, published in 2012, Azula is placed in a mental health facility. In The Search, published in 2013, she accompanies Zuko on his journey to find their mother, and her mental state oscillates between lucidity and delusion. In Smoke and Shadow, published in 2015 and 2016, she leads a group of firebenders in a plot to test Zuko's leadership, claiming that she has found a new purpose. She tells Zuko she has accepted her destiny as his shadow, the unseen force that pushes him to become a stronger Fire Lord. But the animated series contains none of this. And for the millions of viewers who experienced Avatar as a television show and nothing more, Azula's story ends with chains and screaming and no resolution. She is the most psychologically complex villain in the series, a child prodigy warped by an abusive father, a girl who was taught that love is weakness and fear is the only reliable form of control, and her story just stops. It does not conclude. It does not resolve. It stops, the way a broken thing stops, mid-motion, without grace. The mystery of Azula is not a plot mystery. It is a human mystery. What happens to a child who is raised to be a weapon when the war ends and there is nothing left to fight? What happens to a mind that was trained to see manipulation as survival when the structures that rewarded manipulation collapse? What happens to a girl who defined herself entirely through power when all her power is stripped away in a single afternoon? These are questions the show was not equipped to answer in its final episodes, and the choice to leave them unanswered is both frustrating and honest. Because there is no easy answer. There is no redemption arc that would feel earned in 3 episodes. There is no punishment that would feel just for a 14-year-old victim of child abuse. There is no outcome that would satisfy both the audience's desire for closure and the character's staggering complexity. So the show gives you none. It gives you the image, the scream, the chains, and it trusts you to carry the question yourself. The 8th mystery is smaller in scale, but no less puzzling. During the final battle against the Fire Nation airship fleet, in the 4-part finale that aired on July 19, 2008, Sokka finds himself stranded on the hull of an airship with Toph and Suki. Fire Nation soldiers are closing in. There is no escape. And in the final seconds, Sokka does 2 things that save their lives. He throws his boomerang at the soldiers advancing from one direction, and he drops his space sword. The meteorite blade he forged with Master Pyandao in Book 3, Episode 4, Sokka's Master, which aired on October 12, 2007, letting it fall over the edge of the airship and into the forest below. Both weapons hit their targets, the soldiers are stopped, Suki arrives with another airship, and Team Avatar escapes, but the boomerang does not come back, and the space sword is gone. Both fall into the Wulong Forest, somewhere in the Earth Kingdom, and neither is recovered. The show's final scene shows Sokka painting a group portrait of Team Avatar. He is not holding his sword, he is not carrying his boomerang. They are simply gone, and no one mentions them. This might seem like a minor loss in the context of a world-saving battle, but consider what those objects represent. The boomerang was Sokka's weapon from the first episode. It was his father's weapon before him. It was the one constant in his arsenal, the tool he reached for in every fight, the thing that defined him as a warrior when he had no bending and no formal training. It was his identity. The space sword was something different. It was the weapon Sokka made himself, from a material that fell from the sky, under the guidance of a master who saw potential in a boy that the world had written off as the non-bender. The sword was proof that Sokka could create something extraordinary, that his contribution to the team was not less because it was not magical. That craft and intelligence and creativity are their own kind of power. Both of these objects, both of these symbols, are lost in the final battle. And the show never addresses the loss. It does not show Sokka grieving. It does not show him searching. It does not show him returning to the Wulong Forest with a metal detector and a map. It simply lets the weapons disappear, as if they were never important, as if the symbols do not matter once the war is won. But they do matter, and the mystery of the space sword is the mystery of what war takes from you even when you win. Sokka saved the world. He was essential to the victory, and the price he paid was the 2 objects that told him who he was. The boomerang that connected him to his father, the sword that connected him to himself. Both gone. Both somewhere in a forest that the show will never revisit. Did Sokka ever find them? The show does not say. The comics do not say. The Legend of Korra does not say. Sokka appears in Korra as an elderly man, a member of the Republic City Council, and he does not carry a sword. He does not mention a boomerang. The mystery is small, but it is deep, because it is not really a question about weapons. It is a question about what you lose when you win, what the victory costs, what you carry home from the war, and what you leave behind. And maybe the answer is that it does not matter. Maybe the answer is that Sokka does not need a boomerang to know who he is anymore. Maybe the answer is that the sword was always a metaphor, and the metaphor was always about Sokka's value, and by the end of the series his value is proven and the metaphor is no longer necessary. Or maybe the sword is still in the Wulong Forest, embedded in the earth, black as night, waiting for someone to find it. The ninth mystery is the saddest one. Avatar Kuruk of the Northern Water Tribe is the least understood avatar in the cycle. He appears briefly in Book 1, during the Siege of the North, and he is presented as something close to a joke. A surfer, a braggart, an avatar who coasted through his life without accomplishing anything meaningful. Compared to Roku, who tried to stop Sozin and failed heroically, or Koshi, who lived to be 230 years old and created an island to protect her people, Kuruk seems negligible, a footnote in the Avatar lineage. But the truth of Kuruk is far darker and far stranger than the show reveals. Kuruk died at the age of 33. This makes him the youngest known avatar to die of what could be described as natural causes, though there was nothing natural about it. He did not die in battle. He did not die of disease. He died because his spirit was being consumed from the inside. The show hints at this, but never explains it. The Kyoshi novels, written by F.C. Yi and published in 2019 and 2020, provide the full story. Kuruk inherited a world that appeared to be at peace, but beneath the surface, something was profoundly wrong. The boundary between the human world and the spirit world was weakening. Dark spirits were crossing over, corrupted by human violations of ancient agreements. These spirits were not merely angry, they were murderous, and Kuruk, as the Avatar, was the only one who could stop them. So Kuruk hunted dark spirits. He entered the spirit world repeatedly, tracked down the corrupted spirits, and destroyed them. But each time he destroyed a dark spirit, the process damaged his own spiritual essence. His soul was being chipped away piece by piece, battle by battle. A healer named Nyahitha tried to repair the damage, but the damage accumulated faster than it could be healed. Kuruk was dying slowly from the inside out, and he told no one. To cope with the pain and the exhaustion and the isolation, Kuruk adopted a hedonistic lifestyle. He surfed, he partied, he challenged other benders to unnecessary duels. He appeared to the outside world like an avatar who did not care, and the world judged him accordingly. His peers thought he was lazy, his successors thought he was a failure. Even his past lives seemed embarrassed by him. When Aang meets Kuruk's spirit in the show, Kuruk's only advice is to actively shape your own destiny, a line that feels generic until you understand the context. Kuruk is telling Aang what he could not do. He is telling him to succeed where Kuruk failed. The tragedy is that Kuruk's failure was not laziness, it was sacrifice. He gave his life to hold the spiritual boundary together, and nobody knew. Nobody thanked him. Nobody understood. They just watched him deteriorate, shaking their heads, calling him the worst avatar, while he fought invisible battles in a world they could not see and died at 33 with a fractured soul and a stolen lover. Because Ko took Umi. That is the cruelest detail of Kuruk's story. Ko, the face stealer, stole the face of the woman Kuruk loved, and Kuruk spent his remaining years searching the spirit world for a way to get her back. He never found one. He died looking, and the world remembered him as the avatar who wasted his life. The mystery of Kuruk is the mystery of reputations, of how history remembers the people who fought the battles no one could see, of how the quietest sacrifices are often the most invisible. The show gives you a lazy surfer, the truth is a dying hero, and the gap between what the show tells you and what the truth contains is one of the widest in the franchise. The 10th and final mystery is about animals. After the Air Nomad genocide, the sky bison were believed to be extinct. Appa, Aang's bison, was the last one. This is stated or implied throughout the original series, and it is one of the show's most effective emotional beats. Aang is the last airbender, Appa is the last sky bison. They are the final remnants of a civilization that was erased from the world, and their bond is the last thread connecting the present to the past. But in The Legend of Korra, which premiered on April 14, 2012, there are sky bison everywhere. The Air Acolytes, the non-bender followers of Aang's teachings, have them. Tenzin, Aang's son, has one. The new airbenders who emerge after harmonic convergence in Korra Book 3 are paired with them. Sky bison are not extinct. They are abundant. The show explains this briefly. After the 100-Year War, Aang discovered a surviving herd of sky bison in a remote location. Brian Konietzko, co-creator of Avatar, compared this discovery to the continued discovery of new animal species in the 21st century. There were bison hiding in places the Fire Nation never found. A remote tribe in the Fire Nation raised a herd throughout the war. The Bonti, a group of sages on a remote island, also maintained a herd. The bison survived because they hid, and they hid well enough that the Fire Nation, which controlled the skies for 100 years, never found them. This is plausible, but it is also deeply mysterious when you think about it. Sky bison are enormous. They are the size of small houses. They fly. They are not subtle animals. They do not blend into their environment. They are giant, six-legged, flying, furry creatures with flat tails and arrow-shaped markings. Hiding a herd of sky bison for 100 years from a nation that controlled the world's airspace is not a trivial achievement. It is borderline miraculous, and the show does not tell you how it happened. It does not tell you where the herds were hidden. It does not tell you who hid them. It does not tell you if the bison chose to hide themselves, retreating into remote valleys and plowed forests and places where humans never go, or if they were guided there by human protectors who risked their lives to save a species that the Fire Nation wanted dead. There is a beautiful story hiding inside this mystery, a story about people who chose to protect something beautiful in the middle of a war. People who looked at a sky bison, a creature of the air nomads, the enemy of the Fire Nation, and decided that this animal deserved to live, that its extinction would be a loss too great to allow, that the right thing to do, in a world consumed by fire, was to hide something precious in the darkness and guard it until the fire went out. The show does not tell this story, but the existence of the bison herds in Korra proves that it happened. Somewhere during the 100-Year War, someone chose preservation over obedience. Someone chose kindness over fear. Someone chose the bison. And they succeeded. The bison survived. The species was restored. The skies that were empty for a century are full again. And the people who made it possible are anonymous. The show does not name them. It does not honor them. It does not even acknowledge that they existed. They are the most invisible heroes in the Avatar universe, and their mystery is the mystery of all the good that happens in the world without recognition. All the kindness that is never recorded, all the preservation that is never celebrated, all the people who do the right thing and are forgotten. But the 10 mysteries do not end when you name them. They deepen, they connect, they form a web beneath the surface of the show that is more intricate than any single question can capture. And to understand why these mysteries matter, you need to look at what they share. Every one of these mysteries is about something missing. A mother who vanished, a century that was skipped, a face that was stolen, a people who were erased, a power that was never explained, a weapon that was never recovered, a reputation that was never corrected, a species that was never supposed to survive, a girl who was never given the help she needed, an ability that appeared from nowhere and was never understood. The show is built on absences, on the spaces where answers should be. And this is not carelessness. It is architecture. The mysteries are not bugs. They are the mortar between the bricks. They are what holds the world together by giving it depth. A world that explains everything is a world that feels small. A world that leaves questions open is a world that feels real. Because reality does not explain itself. Reality is full of gaps, full of questions that persist for centuries, full of events that happened and were never understood and never will be. Avatar understands this. It understands that the most effective way to make a fictional world feel infinite is to leave parts of it in shadow, to gesture toward depths that the narrative does not have time to explore, to trust the audience to know that the map is not the territory, that the story is not the world, that behind every answered question, there are 10 more that were never asked. Consider how differently the show would feel if every mystery were resolved, if the show explained exactly how Aang survived the iceberg, if it showed Ursa's entire journey in a flashback episode, if it gave Combustion Man a name and a detailed origin story, if it explained energy bending with a diagram in a lecture. The show would be shorter, simpler, and infinitely less powerful. The mysteries are not problems to be solved. They are resonances. They are the overtones that make the fundamental note richer. And there is one more thing the mysteries share. They are all, in some way, about the gap between what is visible and what is real. Aang looks like a boy. He is a boy carrying 100 years of frozen time and the guilt of a genocide he did not cause, but feels responsible for. Ko looks like a centipede with a stolen face. He is a spirit carrying thousands of years of loneliness and the memory of a mother who gave faces to the world. Ursa looks like she vanished. She did not vanish. She was sacrificed. The air nomads look like they were helpless. They fought, and they died, and some of them may have survived in places the narrative never visits. Combustion Man looks like a mindless assassin. He was a boy who blew off his own limbs trying to master a power that no one could explain to him. Energy bending looks like a convenient plot device. It is the oldest form of bending in the world, older than the elements themselves, and it was almost lost forever. The show teaches you this lesson again and again. What you see is not what is there. The surface is not the story. The mystery is not a failure of explanation. It is an invitation to look deeper. And tonight, as you lie here and the words wash over you and your eyes close and the world gets quieter, these mysteries will stay with you. Not as problems, not as frustrations, not as loose ends that need tying, but as depths, as proof that the world of Avatar is larger than the screen, larger than 61 episodes and 4 movies, and 6 graphic novels and 2 spin-off novels and a sequel series, larger than any one person can see, larger than any one story can tell. The mysteries are the proof that this world is alive, that it breathes, that it extends past the borders of the narrative in every direction into places you will never visit and stories you will never hear. And that is not a loss. That is a gift. Because a world you can fully understand is a world you will eventually tire of. And a world that keeps its secrets, that answers some questions and leaves others open, that shows you the stars and reminds you how little you know about the spaces between them, that is a world you can return to forever. Avatar is that world, and these mysteries are the reason why. But we are not finished yet, because each of these 10 questions has a deeper layer that only becomes visible when you hold the mystery up to the light of the show's larger themes. Take the iceberg. The iceberg is the show's original mystery, the one everything else flows from. But it is also a metaphor that the show never names. Aang was preserved. He was frozen in time, held in stasis, removed from the flow of history. And when he emerged, he was a child in a world that had aged 100 years without him. Everyone he knew was dead. Everything he loved was gone. The world had moved on, and he had not. This is not just a plot point. It is a description of grief, of trauma, of what it feels like to be stuck in a moment that the rest of the world has passed through. Aang's 100 years in the ice are a literalization of what it means to be frozen by loss, to be trapped in the moment before everything changed, to emerge into a world that is unrecognizable and have to learn, slowly, painfully, how to be alive in it again. The show never draws this parallel explicitly. It does not need to. The metaphor works because the mystery works. Because the fact that Aang's survival is unexplained makes it feel less like a plot mechanism and more like a miracle. And miracles do not require explanations. They require faith. And the iceberg connects to the air nomad genocide because the genocide is the reason the iceberg matters. If the air nomads had survived, Aang's preservation would be a curiosity, an interesting anomaly. A boy who was frozen for 100 years and woke up to find his people alive and well. That is a comedy. But the air nomads were destroyed, and Aang's preservation is the only reason any trace of their culture survived. The iceberg is not just a mystery, it is a life raft, the last vessel carrying the memory of a civilization that was erased from the earth. This is why the Avatar spirit chose to preserve Aang rather than let him reincarnate. Not because Aang was special, because the air nomads were dying. The Avatar spirit looked into the future and saw the genocide coming and knew that if Aang died, the next Avatar would be born into the Water Tribe, and the air nomads would have no living representative, no one to remember their teachings, no one to practice their bending, no one to carry their culture forward. The Avatar spirit froze Aang because Aang was not just the Avatar, he was the last airbender, and the world needed both. This is not stated in the show, it is interpretation, but it is the kind of interpretation that the mystery invites. Because the show does not tell you why the Avatar spirit chose preservation, you are free to find your own answer. And the answer you find tells you something about how you understand sacrifice and preservation and the weight of being the last of anything. The same layering applies to Ko. On the surface, Ko is a monster, a face-stealing horror, but underneath the horror is a grief story. Ko is estranged from his mother. The mother of faces gives faces to the world. Ko steals them. The mother creates, the son destroys. And the destruction is not malice, it is longing. Ko steals faces because they remind him of his mother. Each face is a piece of her work, a fragment of her art, a remnant of the relationship he lost. He collects them the way a child collects shells on a beach, not for what they are, but for what they represent. Connection to something lost, proximity to someone gone. If this is true, and the supplementary material strongly supports it, then Ko is not a villain. He is a mourner. The most terrifying character in the show is a child who misses his mother. And the parallel to Zuko, who also lost his mother and who also channels his grief into destructive behavior, is unmistakable. Ko and Zuko are the same story told at different scales. A child separated from a parent. A wound that expresses itself as violence. A grief that cannot be spoken and so becomes something worse. And neither story is fully resolved in the original series. Zuko asks about his mother and gets no answer. Ko sits in his tree and wears someone else's face and waits for a visitor who will never come. Both are haunted. Both are stuck. Both are frozen, in their own way, by the absence of the person who should have been there. This is the genius of Avatar's mysteries. They do not just create suspense. They create thematic resonance. The unanswered questions are not dead ends. They are mirrors. They reflect the show's deepest concerns, loss, identity, the gap between appearance and reality, back at you from unexpected angles. Azula's mystery does the same thing. What happened to Azula is a question about a character, but it is also a question about the limits of justice. Azula is 14. She is a war criminal. She is also a victim of child abuse. She was raised by a sociopath who rewarded her cruelty and punished her vulnerability. She was abandoned by her mother, who favored Zuko. She was betrayed by her friends, who chose goodness over loyalty. She lost everything in a single day, and the show leaves her chained to the ground, screaming. What do you do with someone like Azula? How do you hold accountability and compassion in the same hand? How do you punish a child for crimes that were taught to her by the adults who should have protected her? The show does not answer this, because there is no good answer. There is no resolution that is both just and merciful. There is only the question, sitting at the center of the show's moral framework, unanswerable and unavoidable. And the mystery of Sokka's sword is the most personal of all, because it is not about the fate of nations or the nature of spirits. It is about the small things that define us, the tools we carry, the objects we invest with meaning, the pieces of ourselves that we leave behind when the crisis demands it. Sokka throws his boomerang and drops his sword because the alternative is death. He chooses survival over identity. He sacrifices the symbols in order to save the people. And the show never tells you if he gets them back because the show knows that the sacrifice itself is the point. The getting back is irrelevant. What matters is the willingness to let go, to be more than the things you carry, to be yourself without the objects that prove it. These are not questions that can be answered with a plot twist or a flashback or a sequel. They are questions that exist to be carried, to be turned over in the mind, to be whispered in the dark as the night gets longer and the voice gets softer and the world outside your window gets quieter. There is a pattern in the way the show handles its mysteries that becomes visible only when you line them all up. The mysteries that concern the physical world, how did Aang survive, where is the space sword, how did the bison hide, tend to have implied answers. You can piece together a plausible explanation from the evidence the show provides. The Avatar state sustained him. The sword is in the forest. The bison were in remote locations. These are not satisfying answers, but they are adequate. They close the question enough that you can move past it. But the mysteries that concern the spiritual and emotional world, what is Ko? What is energy bending? What happened to Azula's mind? What really happened to Kuruk? Have no implied answers. They remain genuinely open. And this is deliberate. The show distinguishes between the material and the spiritual, between the visible and the invisible, between the questions that logic can handle and the questions that require something else. The something else is what the show is really about. Not bending, not war, not even the Avatar. The show is about the invisible forces that shape visible events. About the grief that drives Zuko, about the guilt that drives Aang, about the loneliness that drives Azula, about the fear that drives Ozai, about the love that drives Iroh. These are the energies that the show bends, and none of them can be fully explained. Energy bending is the show's metaphor for itself. The lion turtle tells Aang that before people bent the elements, they bent the energy within themselves. This is what the show does. It bends the energy within you. It reaches into your emotional architecture and shifts things around. It makes you feel grief for a civilization you never knew. It makes you feel sympathy for a villain you should hate. It makes you feel hope for a world that exists only in animation, and it never explains how it does this. The mechanism is invisible. The effect is real. The mystery is permanent. This is why the show works as a sleep essay, because the mysteries are not agitating. They are not cliffhangers. They do not create the anxious, buzzing energy of unresolved plot. They create the opposite. They create depth, stillness, the sensation of sinking into something vast and quiet. The mysteries are the deep water beneath the narrative, and you are floating on the surface, and the depth is comforting rather than frightening because you know it is there even if you cannot see it. The iceberg is beneath you, Ko is beneath you, Ursa is beneath you, the air nomads are beneath you, Combustion Man is beneath you, Azula is beneath you, Azula is beneath you, Sokka's sword is beneath you, the Sky Bison are beneath you, all of them down in the dark, holding the world up, unseen and essential. And you do not need to understand them, you just need to know they are there. Let us go deeper into one more, because the mystery of Kuruk deserves more time than the show ever gave it, and tonight, we have time. Kuruk was born in the Northern Water Tribe approximately 900 years before the events of Avatar. He was the Avatar after Yangchen, the air nomad Avatar whose era is often described as one of the most peaceful in recorded history. Yangchen was so effective at maintaining balance that by the time she died and was reincarnated as Kuruk, the world appeared to need nothing. There were no wars, no great conflicts, no tyrants to depose or nations to defend. Kuruk inherited a world that looked, on the surface, like paradise. But Yangchen's peace came at a cost that she may not have anticipated. In order to maintain balance in the human world, she had made deals and agreements with spirits that she could not always honor. She had prioritized the needs of humans over the needs of spirits, and the spiritual ecosystem had grown sick in ways that were invisible to everyone except the Avatar. Kuruk discovered this sickness early in his tenure. Dark spirits, corrupted by human encroachment and broken agreements, were crossing into the physical world through passages created by an ancient spirit called Father Glowworm. These spirits were not abstract threats. They were killers. They attacked human settlements. They possessed people. They warped the landscape around them. And Kuruk was the only one who could stop them, because the Avatar is the bridge between the human and spirit worlds, and only the Avatar can fight spirits on their own terms. So Kuruk fought. He entered the spirit world and tracked the dark spirits and destroyed them. But destroying a spirit is not like defeating a human opponent. When Kuruk killed a dark spirit, the process tore at his own spiritual essence. Each battle left him diminished. Each victory cost him a piece of himself. His healer, Niehita, could repair some of the damage, but the repairs were never complete. Kuruk was being hollowed out from the inside, slowly, battle by battle, and there was no way to stop it except to stop fighting. And he could not stop fighting because the dark spirits kept coming. The tragedy of Kuruk is compounded by his isolation. He could not tell anyone what he was doing. The spiritual battles were invisible to non-benders. Even other benders could not see the dark spirits or understand the nature of the threat. Kuruk fought alone in a dimension that most people did not believe was real, against enemies that most people did not know existed. And when the fighting took its toll, when the damage to his spirit manifested as physical exhaustion and emotional instability, the people around him saw only the symptoms. They saw a young man who was tired and reckless and seemingly uninterested in his duties. They saw an Avatar who surfed and partied and challenged strangers to fights. They did not see the dying man underneath the bravado. They did not see the sacrifice underneath the hedonism. The Kyoshi novels reveal that Kuruk knew he was dying. He knew the spiritual damage was accumulating faster than it could be repaired. He knew he did not have much time, and he chose to spend what time he had fighting, rather than resting protecting the world, rather than protecting himself, because the alternative was to let the dark spirits win. And then Ko took Umi. This is the cruelest twist in Kuruk's story. After years of fighting spirits to protect the human world, a spirit stole the one thing Kuruk cared about most. Ko took Umi's face, and with it, her identity, her consciousness, herself. She was not killed, she was erased, turned into a blank, a faceless body, alive but gone. Kuruk spent his remaining years searching the spirit world for Umi. He never found her. He died at 33. His spirit fractured, his body exhausted, his reputation in ruins. The world remembered him as the worst Avatar, the lazy one, the careless one, the one who achieved nothing. 900 years later, when Aang needs advice from his past lives, Kuruk tells him to actively shape his own destiny. This advice sounds generic if you do not know Kuruk's story. If you do know his story, it sounds like the last words of a man who fought his entire life to shape a world that refused to be shaped, who poured everything he had into a battle no one could see, and who died knowing that no one would ever understand what he had done or why. The mystery of Kuruk is not just about what happened to him. It is about what happens to the people who sacrifice everything and are remembered for nothing. It is about the gap between reputation and reality, It is about the cruelty of a world that judges people by what it can see and ignores everything it cannot. And it is about the particular pain of being misunderstood, not by strangers, but by your own legacy, by the history that carries your name and gets it wrong. Kuruk fought the invisible war. He paid the highest price, and the world called him a failure. That is the mystery. Not what happened to Kuruk, but how the world could get someone so completely, so devastatingly wrong. And this connects back to every other mystery in the show. Because every mystery in Avatar is, at its core, about the gap between what is seen and what is true. Aang appears to be a carefree boy. He carries the weight of a genocide. Ko appears to be a monster. He is a grieving child. Ursa appears to have vanished. She was sacrificed. The air nomads appear to have been helpless. They fought and died, and some of them may have survived. Combustion Man appears to be a weapon. He was a boy who nearly destroyed himself learning to control a power no one could teach him. Energy bending appears to be a plot device. It is the oldest magic in the world. Azula appears to be a villain. She is a child. Sokka's sword appears to be a prop. It is a symbol of everything he sacrificed to win. The Sky Bison appear to be miracles. They are the product of anonymous courage. And Kuruk appears to be a failure. He is a hero. The show tells you this through its mysteries, through the things it does not say, through the spaces it leaves open, through the questions it asks and refuses to answer. The mysteries are not flaws in the narrative. They are the narrative. They are the show's argument, delivered not through dialogue but through silence, that the world is deeper than what you can see, that the truth is harder than what you are told, and that the most important stories are often the ones that no one tells. There are smaller mysteries that live inside the larger ones, and they deserve attention too. Inside the mystery of the air nomad genocide is the mystery of Monk Gyatso. When Aang finds Gyatso's skeleton in the southern air temple, it is surrounded by the remains of dozens of Fire Nation soldiers. This is one of the most chilling images in the series, shown in Book 1, Chapter 3, The Southern Air Temple, which aired on February 25, 2005. The implications are staggering. Gyatso, a peaceful elderly monk who preferred baking fruit pies to fighting, killed dozens of comet-enhanced firebenders before he fell. How did he do it? The comet multiplied firebending power by an enormous factor. The firebenders who attacked the temples were not ordinary soldiers. They were supercharged, their flames amplified to a degree that Aang would not see until the series finale. And Gyatso defeated dozens of them. An old man, a pacifist, a pie maker. The show never explains how. It never even acknowledges the contradiction. Here is a man who lived by the principles of nonviolence, who belonged to a culture that valued all life, who presumably spent his days in meditation and teaching and laughter. And in the final hours of his life, he became a warrior so fearsome that he took an entire squadron of enhanced firebenders with him. There are fan theories. Some suggest that Gyatso suffocated the firebenders by removing the air from their lungs, a technique that the show does not explore until the Legend of Korra, when Zahir uses it to assassinate the Earth Queen in Book 3. If Gyatso used this technique, it would mean that he, a monk devoted to the sanctity of life, chose to kill by removing the very element that represents freedom and breath. He used air, the element of peace and detachment, as a weapon of suffocation. He turned his own philosophy inside out in order to protect his people. Other theories suggest that Gyatso simply fought, that he used the devastating offensive potential of airbending, the vortexes, the air slices, the raw kinetic force to destroy the soldiers. That when the moment came, he abandoned everything he believed in and fought like an animal because the alternative was to stand by and watch his people die. That his last act was not meditation or acceptance. It was violence, pure, desperate, furious violence. Either interpretation is devastating. Either way, Gyatso's final moments represent the destruction of everything the air nomads stood for. Their philosophy of peace was not just proven insufficient, it was forced to consume itself. The air nomads could not survive without fighting, and in fighting, they became something they had spent thousands of years trying not to be. The skeleton in the temple is the show's answer to the question of whether pacifism can survive contact with real evil. The answer is no, not intact, not unchanged. The pacifist can survive, perhaps, for a time. But the pacifism dies the moment the firebenders breach the gates. Gyatso proved that an airbender can fight. He also proved that the cost of fighting is everything. Inside the mystery of Ursa is another mystery that is often overlooked. The mystery of Ozai. Not what Ozai did, what he is. Ozai is, by the show's own design, the least developed major villain in the series. You know almost nothing about him. You know he is cruel. You know he burned his son's face. You know he planned the destruction of the Earth Kingdom. You know he values power above everything, but you do not know why. You do not know what made him this way. You do not know if he was always cruel or if something happened to him. You do not know his childhood. You do not know his relationship with his own parents beyond the broad strokes. You do not know if Azulon was harsh or loving. You do not know if Ozai had friends or mentors or anyone who tried to steer him toward decency. The show does not tell you because Ozai is not meant to be understood. He is meant to be a force, a wall, an obstacle so absolute that the hero must find an entirely new kind of bending to overcome it. Ozai is less a character and more a condition. He is the embodiment of power without wisdom, ambition without empathy, fire without warmth. But the mystery remains. Real sociopaths do not appear from nowhere. Real tyrants are made, not born. And the show's refusal to explain Ozai, while dramatically effective, leaves a gap in the narrative that is both intentional and troubling. Because if Ozai is simply evil, if there is no cause and no origin and no explanation, then the show is saying that some people are born broken. That evil is an inherent quality, not a consequence of experience. And that clashes with everything else the show argues. Zuko proves that environment shapes character. Azula proves that people can change. Aang proves that mercy is more powerful than punishment. The entire thematic architecture of the show is built on the premise that people are not fixed, that nature is not destiny, that the child of a monster can choose to be kind. But Ozai undermines this. Ozai is the exception, the one character who is never given a chance to be anything other than what he is. The one character for whom the show offers no origin and no redemption and no complexity, and the mystery of Ozai is whether this absence is a flaw in the narrative or a deliberate statement about the limits of understanding. Some evil cannot be explained. Some people are beyond the reach of empathy. Some questions, if answered, would diminish the thing they are trying to illuminate. Ozai's mystery might be the show's way of saying that the question of why is not always useful, that sometimes the only productive question is how do we stop him, and that the energy spent trying to understand a tyrant is energy that could be spent protecting the people the tyrant threatens. This is an uncomfortable position for a show that otherwise champions understanding and compassion. But discomfort is where the deepest truths live, and the mystery of Ozai sits in that discomfort. Unresolved, asking you to decide for yourself what you believe about the origins of cruelty. Inside the mystery of the Sky Bison is the mystery of the hybrid animals. Avatar's world is populated almost entirely by hybrid animals. Turtle ducks, platypus bears, saber-toothed moose lions, eel hounds, badger moles, cat gators. The list is enormous, and the naming convention is consistent. Each animal is described as a combination of two real-world animals, which implies that somewhere in the Avatar world's history, both component animals existed independently. If there are turtle ducks, there were once turtles and ducks, separately. If there are platypus bears, there were once platypuses and bears. The hybrid names presuppose the existence of the original species, but you never see the originals. No one in the show has ever mentioned encountering a regular turtle or a regular duck. The hybrid animals are not exceptions. They are the norm. The one exception is the Earth King's pet bear, Bosco. When the characters discover that Bosco is just a bear, not a platypus bear or a skunk bear, or an armadillo bear, they are shocked. A regular bear is, in the Avatar world, the rarest and most unusual animal imaginable. The joke lands because the audience shares the character's surprise, but it also deepens the mystery. If regular bears exist, but are so rare that they are treated as novelties, what happened to all the other regular animals? Where are the regular turtles, the regular ducks, the regular moose and the regular lions and the regular eels? Did the hybrid animals replace them? Were the originals driven to extinction by their more versatile hybrid counterparts? Or were the originals never separate species to begin with? Perhaps in the Avatar world, the hybrid animals are the natural state, and the names are not combinations but simply what these creatures have always been called. Perhaps turtle ducks are not the product of turtles and ducks merging. Perhaps they are their own species, and the names are coincidental, and the assumption that there were once separate turtles and separate ducks is a projection from our world onto theirs. The show never answers this. It never even asks. The hybrid animals are treated as background, as world-building decoration, as the kind of detail that makes the Avatar world feel lived in and playful. But underneath the playfulness is a genuine mystery of this world, about how its ecosystem works, about why its animals are the way they are, about what happened to the ones that were not hybrids. And this connects to the Sky Bison and the Badger Moles, and the dragons and the moon koi. Because these are the non-hybrid animals, the original bending teachers, the creatures that are not combinations of other things but are entirely themselves, singular and ancient and tied to the elements in ways that no hybrid animal is. The sky bison are the original airbenders. The badger moles are the original earthbenders. The dragons are the original firebenders. The moon and ocean spirits are the original waterbending source. These animals are not hybrids because they are not natural. They are spiritual. They are the points where the spirit world touches the physical world and leaves a mark in the shape of a living creature. The sky bison are not animals in the way that turtle ducks are animals. They are something older, something closer to the source. And the mystery of their survival during the genocide becomes even more significant when you understand this. The Fire Nation did not just try to wipe out the air nomads. They tried to sever one of the world's connections to the spirit world. They tried to kill the creatures that were the living bridge between the element of air and the human capacity to bend it. And they failed. The bison survived. The bridge held. The spiritual connection between the world and the element of air was damaged, but not destroyed. This is why the bison matter. Not because they are cute or because they are Appa's relatives, but because they represent the resilience of the spiritual order. The Fire Nation tried to break the world's connection to air, and the world refused to be broken. The bison hid. The bison waited. The bison endured. And 100 years later, they emerged, and the element of air was alive again. The people who hid the bison were not just saving animals. They were saving a piece of the world's soul, and they did not know it. They just saw creatures that needed protecting, and they protected them, and that was enough. That was everything. There is something about the way Avatar handles its mysteries that is unique among animated shows, and perhaps among all shows. Most storytelling treats mystery as a promise. A mystery is introduced, the audience is hooked, and the payoff comes when the mystery is resolved. This is the model of mystery novels, police procedurals, thriller movies. The mystery creates tension, the resolution releases it. The contract between the story and the audience is clear. Ask, answer, move on. Avatar does not honor this contract. It asks questions and then walks away from them. It introduces mysteries and lets them stand. It creates gaps and does not fill them. And the audience, remarkably, does not punish the show for this. Avatar is one of the most beloved animated series ever created, and its fans have been debating its unanswered questions for over 20 years. The mysteries are not a source of frustration. They are a source of devotion. The fans love the questions as much as the answers. They love the depth that the questions create. They love the sense that the world is too large and too complex and too real to be fully explained in 61 episodes. This is because Avatar treats its mysteries the way life treats its mysteries, with silence, with ambiguity, with the quiet acknowledgement that some things cannot be known, and this silence is not empty. It is full. Full of possibility, full of stories that could be told but are not, full of answers that could be given but are withheld, full of the particular beauty of not knowing, which is the beauty of standing at the edge of something vast and recognizing that your understanding will never reach the other side. The show aired its final episode on July 19, 2008. That was over 17 years ago. And in those 17 years, the mysteries have not diminished. They have grown, because every new fan who discovers the show discovers the questions. And every new conversation about the show circles back to the unknowns. What happened to Ursa? How did Aang survive? What is Ko? What happened to Azula? Where is the space sword? How did the bison hide? What is energy bending? How did Yatso fight? Why is Ozai the way he is? What really happened to Kuruk? These questions are the show's legacy, not the fights, not the bending, not the finale. The questions, because the fights end and the bending fades and the finale resolves, but the questions persist. They outlast the narrative, they outlast the characters, they outlast the medium. They become the thing that keeps the world alive in the minds of the people who love it. And that is what a mystery is at its best. Not a problem, not a puzzle, not a gap in the story that needs filling. A mystery is a door that stays open, a room you can always enter, a depth you can always return to, a world that is never finished because the questions never stop. Avatar's world is never finished, its mysteries are never solved, and you are lying here in the dark with the sound of these words in your ears, and you are part of it, part of the mystery, part of the depth, part of the long, quiet, unfinished story that started on February 21st, 2005, and has not ended yet, and will not end because the questions are still alive and the world is still open, and the door is still there, waiting for you to walk through it. Whenever you are ready, wherever you are, however tired or awake or asleep you happen to be. But there are mysteries we have not yet touched. Smaller ones, quieter ones, The kind that do not appear on lists or in forum threads, but that sit in the back of your mind after a rewatch, nagging at you like a word you almost remember but cannot quite say. The mystery of the dragons. Fire Lord Sozin hunted the dragons to near extinction. The show tells you this. Iroh was believed to have killed the last dragon, earning himself the title Dragon of the West. But Iroh did not kill the dragon. He lied. He found the last two dragons, Ran and Shaw, living in secret with the Sun Warriors, and he kept their existence a secret to protect them. You learn this in Book 3, Chapter 13, The Firebending Masters, which aired on July 15, 2008. Ran and Shaw are the last dragons. They are the original firebending masters, the creatures from whom humanity first learned to bend fire. And they are living with the Sun Warriors, a civilization that the rest of the world believes is extinct but that has in fact survived in hiding for centuries, maintaining the ancient, purer form of firebending that was practiced before the Fire Nation corrupted it into a weapon of aggression. The mystery is this: how did Iroh find them? And why did he go looking? Iroh was a Fire Nation general. He was the crown prince. He was the son of Azalon, the grandson of Sozin, the product of a dynasty that had spent a century hunting dragons and waging war. He was the last person you would expect to protect a pair of endangered creatures from his own nation's extermination campaign. And yet he did. The show tells you that Iroh traveled the world after the death of his son, Lu Ten, at the siege of Ba Sing Se, that the death of his son broke something in him, or perhaps opened something, that he went on a spiritual journey that took him through all four nations and into the spirit world itself. And somewhere during that journey, he found the Sun Warriors and their dragons, and he chose to protect them. But the show does not tell you the specifics. It does not tell you how an aging Fire Nation general gained the trust of a civilization that had been hiding from the Fire Nation for centuries. It does not tell you what Iroh said to the Sun Warriors, or what they said to him, or what test he passed to be allowed into the presence of Ran and Shaw. It does not tell you what it felt like for a man whose entire nation had been taught that firebending is rage and destruction to stand before the original masters and learn that firebending is life. That fire is not a weapon, it is energy, it is warmth, it is the sun. This is one of the most important moments in the show's mythology, and it happens entirely off screen. You know it happened because Iroh is different after, because his firebending is different, because his understanding of fire is deeper and more nuanced than anyone else's in the series, because he can breathe fire, a technique associated with the dragons, because he redirects lightning, a technique he invented by studying waterbending, because he is, by the time the show begins, the most spiritually advanced firebender alive. But you never see the transformation. You never see the moment when Iroh stopped being a general and started being a sage. You never see the conversation with the Sun Warriors, the dance with the dragons, the fire that changed his understanding of his own element. The show skips it. It gives you the result without the process, the destination without the journey, the answer without the question. And the mystery of that missing journey is the mystery of Iroh himself. How does a man change? What does it take to break free of a lifetime of conditioning? What does it take to look at the traditions you were raised in, the values you were taught, the nation you served, and say, no, this is wrong. I was wrong. I need to be something else. Iroh's journey is the show's most powerful off-screen story. And it is never told. It exists only in the negative space, in the gap between the Iroh who laid siege to Ba Sing Se and the Iroh who sits in a tea shop and plays Peisho and waits patiently for his nephew to become the person he was always meant to be. The mystery of how Iroh became Iroh is the mystery of transformation itself. And maybe the show leaves it unsolved because transformation, real transformation, cannot be captured in a scene or a flashback or a montage. It happens slowly, over years, in the quiet spaces between the dramatic moments, in the conversations no one else hears, in the decisions that no one else sees. It happens the way tea steeps, gradually, imperceptibly, until the water is no longer water but something else entirely. And you cannot point to the exact moment it changed. You can only drink it and know that it is different. There is another mystery that lives inside the show's world building, one that most viewers never think about because the show presents it so matter-of-factly that it seems unremarkable. But it is, when you examine it, one of the strangest aspects of the entire Avatar universe, the mystery of bending inequality. In the Water Tribes, not everyone is a bender. In the Earth Kingdom, not everyone is a bender. In the Fire Nation, not everyone is a bender. But in the Air Nomad civilization, every single member was a bender. 100%. The show states this explicitly. Every air nomad could airbend. This is why the entire civilization was targeted for destruction, because the Fire Nation knew that every air nomad was a potential combatant, even the children, even the elderly, even the monks who had never thrown a punch in their lives. There were no non-bending air nomads to spare or enslave or convert. Every single one of them could bend. Why? Why were the air nomads universally gifted with bending while the other three nations produced benders only as a fraction of their populations? The show never explains this. It is one of those world-building facts that is presented as natural, as obvious, as something that does not need justification. But it does need justification because it implies something profound about the relationship between bending and spirituality. The most common fan theory is that the air nomads were universally spiritual. Their culture was built around meditation, detachment, and spiritual practice. Every member of their civilization lived in a way that was aligned with the spiritual dimension of their element. And bending, at its deepest level, is a spiritual practice. It is not just physical technique. It is the connection between a person's inner energy and the energy of the world around them. The air nomads were all benders because they were all spiritually connected. Their way of life was, in itself, a form of bending practice. This theory is elegant and it fits the show's thematic framework, but it raises its own questions. If spirituality is the key to bending, why can't a deeply spiritual non-bender in the Earth Kingdom learn to earthbend through meditation and spiritual practice? The show implies that bending is at least partly genetic, that it runs in families, that you are either born with the ability or you are not. But if it were purely genetic, the air nomads' universal bending would be a genetic anomaly. An entire population sharing a single trait with 100% penetrance is biologically extraordinary. It would require either extreme genetic isolation, which contradicts the air nomads' nomadic, traveling lifestyle, or some other factor that the show does not identify. The truth is that the show does not have a definitive answer for how bending is distributed. It offers partial explanations. Genetics plays a role. The lion turtles originally granted bending to humans. Harmonic convergence in Korra randomly gave airbending to non-benders. Each explanation adds a piece to the puzzle, but the pieces do not form a complete picture. They form an incomplete one, with gaps and contradictions and ambiguities that the show acknowledges implicitly by never offering a unified theory. And this is appropriate, because in the Avatar world, bending is not a science. It is a phenomenon. It is something that exists and is practiced and is central to civilization, but that is not fully understood by the people who live with it. This is true of many things in the real world. Gravity exists, consciousness exists, love exists. We can describe them, we can study them, we can use them, but we cannot fully explain them. They remain, at their core, mysterious. Bending is the Avatar world's gravity. It is everywhere. It is fundamental. It shapes everything, and no one fully understands it. Not the benders, not the sages, not the avatars, not even the lion turtles, who gave it to humanity and then retreated to the margins of the world and waited in silence for 10,000 years. The mystery of bending inequality is the show's quiet admission that its most fundamental concept is, at bottom, inexplicable. That the world it has built is too deep for any single explanation to reach the floor. That the questions go all the way down, past the answers, past the theories, past the maps and the histories and the genealogies, into a place where the only honest response is wonder. And wonder is what the show gives you, not answers, not resolutions, not the neat closure that most narratives promise and deliver. Wonder, the sensation of standing at the edge of something you cannot see the bottom of, and feeling not fear but awe, the feeling of knowing that there is more, that there will always be more, that the depth is infinite and the darkness is not empty and the silence is not silence but a kind of breathing, slow and vast and patient. Like the world itself is alive and waiting for you to notice. You have noticed. You are here. You are listening. And the mysteries are with you. All 10 of them and all the smaller ones that live inside them and all the questions that grow from the questions like branches from a tree that will never stop growing because the roots go deeper than anyone has ever dug. The iceberg, Ko, Ursa, the genocide, Combustion Man, energy bending, Azula, the space sword, Karuk, the sky bison, the dragon's Eros transformation, bending inequality, Gyatso's last fight, Ozai's origin, the hybrid animals, the lion turtles, the mother of faces, the spirit world's rules, the Avatar cycle's purpose, the gap between what is seen and what is true. These are the questions that Avatar leaves behind. These are the doors it leaves open. These are the rooms you can always enter, the depths you can always return to, the parts of the world that are always waiting for you, patient and vast and quiet, like a library that never closes, like a conversation that never ends, like a fire that never goes out. There is one more dimension to these mysteries that we have not discussed, and it is perhaps the most important one: the dimension of time. Avatar is a show about a world with a 10,000-year history. The Avatar cycle has been running for 10 millennia. Tens of thousands of avatars have lived and died. Civilizations have risen and fallen. Wars have been fought and forgotten. Spirits have crossed between worlds and been lost. Languages have changed. Borders have shifted. Entire cultures have emerged and been absorbed and re-emerged in different forms. The scope of the show's history is staggering, and the show gives you only the thinnest sliver of it. You see about 3 years, from Aang's awakening to the end of the 100-Year War. 3 years out of 10,000, that is less than 1/30th of 1% of the Avatar world's recorded history. Everything else, the 99.97% that you do not see, is mystery. And this is not a limitation. This is the architecture of depth. The show's history is an ocean. The story is a ship. You sail across the surface, and you see the waves and the sky and the occasional island. But underneath you is an unimaginable volume of water that you will never touch. The depth is always there. You can feel it in the way the ship moves, in the way the currents pull, in the way the light changes when you look down and see how far the darkness goes. Every mystery in the show is a window into that depth. When Ko tells Aang they have met before, he is opening a window into 900 years of history. When the Lion Turtle speaks of the era before the Avatar, he is opening a window into the dawn of civilization. When Iroh redirects lightning using a technique he learned from watching waterbenders, he is opening a window into a lifetime of travel and study that the show will never detail. And the effect of these windows is cumulative. Each one by itself is a small moment, a line of dialogue, a visual detail, a throwaway reference, but taken together they create the overwhelming impression of a world that extends far beyond the borders of the screen. A world with a past so deep and a future so long that the story you are watching is not the story. It is a story, one of thousands that this world contains, and the rest of them are out there, in the dark, untold and unfinished, and waiting. This is what makes Avatar different from other animated shows. Not the bending, not the action, not even the characters, as brilliant as they are. What makes Avatar different is the depth, the sense that the world is real, that it was there before the cameras arrived and will be there after they leave, that the story is a spotlight on a stage that extends in every direction, and that the darkness beyond the spotlight is not empty but full of stories, full of people, full of mysteries. And the mysteries you have heard tonight are the ones closest to the spotlight. They are the ones that the narrative almost illuminated but chose to leave in shadow. The ones that caught the edge of the light and glinted briefly before disappearing back into the dark. They are the show's acknowledgement that the world is bigger than the story, that the map is not the territory, that the truth is wider than any telling. There are mysteries we will never know the answers to, not because the answers do not exist, but because the world is too large and the story is too finite, and the gap between them is where the magic lives. The magic of depth, the magic of implication, the magic of a world that refuses to be fully known. You are lying in that gap right now, between the known and the unknown, between the story and the world, between the questions and the answers that will never come. And this is not a bad place to be. This is in fact the best place to be, because this is where the imagination lives, where the dreaming happens, where the world opens up and lets you in and says, "Here, this is yours. Do what you want with it, build what you want from it, imagine what you cannot see, because what you cannot see is the largest and most beautiful part of all." Consider the spirits. The spirit world in Avatar is one of the most underdeveloped aspects of the show's mythology, and this underdevelopment is its greatest strength. You see fragments. Heibai, the forest spirit who attacks a village in Book 1. Ko, beneath his tree, the moon and ocean spirits swimming in their pool. Wan Shitong, the knowledge spirit sinking his library into the desert. The painted lady watching over a polluted river in the Fire Nation. Each spirit has rules that are specific to it and that do not necessarily apply to other spirits. Ko steals faces from those who show emotion. Wan Shitong hoards knowledge and punishes those who seek it for violent purposes. Heibai rages when his forest is destroyed, and calms when offered a connection to nature. There is no unified theory of spirits, no handbook, no taxonomy. Each one is individual, unpredictable, governed by its own logic. And this is both realistic and deeply mysterious, because the spirit world is not the human world. It does not follow human rules, it does not respond to human categories. It is, as the show presents it, genuinely alien, a dimension where emotions have physical force, where time moves differently, where geography is mutable, where the landscape reflects the emotional state of its inhabitants, where you can walk in a straight line and end up where you started, where the dead can speak and the living can get lost, and the boundary between self and other is permeable in ways that the physical world does not allow. The show gives you enough of the spirit world to know that it is important. It does not give you enough to understand it. And this gap between importance and understanding is where the most powerful mysteries live. What are the rules of the spirit world? Why do some spirits interact with humans and others avoid them? What is the relationship between spirits and the elements? Are the original Bending Masters, the dragons, the badger moles, the sky bison, the moon, and ocean koi, spirits or animals or something in between? What happens to an avatar's spirit after death? Do the past lives exist independently in the spirit world, or are they aspects of a single continuous consciousness? Can spirits die? If Ko were killed, would the stolen faces be freed? Is there a hierarchy among spirits? Who or what is the most powerful spirit? Is Rava, the spirit of light, truly the most powerful, or is she simply the one the show chose to name? None of these questions have definitive answers, and the show is stronger for it, because the spirit world is meant to be mysterious. It is meant to be the place where human understanding reaches its limit, the place where the rational mind, the explaining mind, the cataloging mind, has to stop and admit that there are things it cannot grasp. The spirit world is the show's representation of the ineffable, the part of reality that exists beyond language, the part that you can experience but never describe, the part that you can feel but never explain. And tonight, as you drift, you are in a kind of spirit world yourself, the space between waking and sleeping, the threshold where the conscious mind loosens its grip and the unconscious begins to stir, the place where the rules of the daytime world, logic, sequence, cause, and effect, start to dissolve and something older and stranger takes their place. In the Avatar world, the boundary between the human world and the spirit world is thin in certain places. At the North Pole, where the koi fish swim, at the great banyan grove tree whose roots reach into both dimensions, at the solstices, when the veil between worlds is at its weakest. These are the places and times where crossing over is possible, where a person can step out of the physical world and into something larger. You are at one of those thin places now, the place between consciousness and dreams. And the mysteries of Avatar are the spirits that live in that space. They are the questions that follow you from one world into the other, the thoughts that persist when everything else fades, the images that stay long after the words stop. The iceberg, glowing blue in the dark water, Ko's face shifting and never settling, Ursa's hand on Zuko's cheek, Gyatso's skeleton surrounded by the fallen, the lion turtle rising from the ocean like an island that has always been there, Azula's eyes wild and burning, Sokka's sword falling, Kuruk alone in the spirit world searching, the sky bison hidden in a valley no one has found, and the dragons, Ran and Shaw, dancing in fire and color, ancient and alive and beautiful beyond words. These images are not answers, they are doors. And right now, in this space between waking and sleeping, every door is open and every room is lit, and every mystery is present and patient and waiting. You do not need to solve them, you just need to let them be. To hold them lightly, the way you hold a thought at the edge of sleep, not gripping it, not chasing it, just letting it exist in the space between your mind and the dark. The mysteries will be there in the morning. They will be there the next time you watch the show. They will be there in 20 years when you show the show to your children, or your nieces and nephews, or the next generation of people who will discover this world and fall in love with it and carry its questions forward into a future that neither the show nor this video can predict. The questions outlast the answers, the mysteries outlast the stories, the world outlasts the telling of it, and you are part of that continuity now. Part of the long, quiet, beautiful tradition of people who watched Avatar and were changed by it and carried its mysteries forward and kept them alive by the simple act of wondering. That is enough. Wondering is enough. You do not need to know. You just need to wonder. And the wondering will carry you through the night. And the night will carry you into morning. And the morning will carry you into another day of being alive in a world that is like the Avatar world, full of things you cannot explain and do not need to. Let us stay a little longer with the things that linger. There is a mystery about the Avatar cycle itself that the show raises in its quietest moments and never addresses directly. The Avatar is the bridge between the human world and the spirit world. The Avatar reincarnates in a fixed cycle, water, earth, fire, air, endlessly. The Avatar's purpose is to maintain balance. These are the rules, and they are, for 3 seasons, treated as absolute. But underneath the rules is a question that the show never asks out loud. Why these 4 elements? Why water, earth, fire and air? Why not wood, or metal, or light or shadow? The show presents the four elements as fundamental, as axiomatic as the building blocks of reality itself. But the existence of sub-bending forms, metal bending, blood bending, lava bending, lightning bending, suggests that the four elements are not as fundamental as they appear. They are categories, containers, convenient groupings that human beings imposed on a reality that is more fluid and more complex than any four-part system can capture. Metal is earth, blood is water, lava is a combination of earth and fire, lightning is fire, or is it energy, or is it something the show has no name for? The boundaries between the elements are permeable. The categories leak. And the further you push into the sub-bending specialties, the more the neat four-element system begins to look like a simplification of something far more complex. Energy bending hints at this. The lion turtle tells Aang that before the elements, there was energy. Energy is the substrate. The elements are the surface expressions. And if this is true, then the entire bending system, the system that defines the show's world, its politics, its wars, its cultures, is a simplification, a useful simplification. The way Newton's laws are useful simplifications of a reality that Einstein would later reveal to be stranger and more beautiful. But a simplification nonetheless. What lies beneath the elements? What is the energy that the lion turtle speaks of? Is it chai? Is it spirit? Is it consciousness? Is it the life force itself? And if it is the life force, then energy bending is not a sub-bending form, it is the original form, the master form, the form from which all others descended. And the fact that it was forgotten, that 10,000 years of Avatar history passed without anyone remembering it, is itself a mystery. How do you forget the most fundamental thing? How does a civilization lose its deepest knowledge? The answer might be that the knowledge was not lost, it was suppressed, buried, hidden. The lion turtles retreated from the world. The spirits withdrew. The boundary between the human world and the spirit world hardened. And the deep knowledge, the knowledge of energy, was sealed away with everything else that the human world could not contain. This is speculation. The show does not confirm it. But the show creates the conditions for the speculation. And that is almost the same thing. Because a mystery is not just a question. A mystery is a space where imagination can operate, where the mind can build structures that the narrative does not provide, where you can think your way into the world and feel, for a moment, like you have discovered something that the show was holding back, something it wanted you to find on your own. And this is the deepest pleasure of Avatar's mysteries. Not the frustration of not knowing, the pleasure of almost knowing, the pleasure of standing at the edge of understanding and feeling the ground shift beneath your feet and catching a glimpse, just for a second, of something vast and strange and true. And then the glimpse fades, and the ground steadies, and you are left with the memory of what you almost saw. And the memory is enough. The memory is, in some ways, better than the thing itself, because the thing itself would be fixed and finite and knowable. And the memory is infinite. The memory is a door that stays open. The show created these doors on purpose. The writers knew what they were doing. They knew that an unexplained mystery would outlive an explained one. They knew that the question of Ursa would resonate longer than any answer could. They knew that Ko's unexplained rules would be scarier than a detailed explanation. They knew that the iceberg's miracle would be more powerful as a miracle than as a mechanism. This is not lazy storytelling. This is the hardest kind of storytelling there is, because it requires confidence. It requires trust. It requires the willingness to leave something unfinished and believe that the audience will not punish you for it, but thank you. It requires the understanding that a story's power is not proportional to the amount of information it delivers, but to the amount of space it creates for the audience to fill. Avatar creates enormous space, cathedral-sized space, space enough for 1 million conversations and 1 million theories, and 1 million late-night discussions between friends who love the show and cannot stop talking about it. The mysteries are the architecture of that space. They are the arches and the columns and the vaulted ceilings. And the audience fills the space with their own thoughts, their own theories, their own love. And tonight, you are filling it too. Whether you are awake or asleep, whether you are listening or drifting, whether you can hear these words clearly or they've become a murmur at the edge of consciousness, you are filling the space. Your presence fills it. Your attention fills it. Your willingness to lie in the dark and listen to someone talk about the unanswered questions of a cartoon that aired 2 decades ago fills it. And that willingness is its own kind of mystery. Why do you care? Why does anyone care? Why do these questions about a fictional world, about animated characters, about events that never happened, matter? Why do they keep you up at night? Or rather, why do they help you sleep? Why is the depth of a fictional world comforting? Why is the darkness beneath a fictional ocean calming? Why do mysteries that will never be solved feel more like a warm blanket than an unscratchable itch. Maybe it is because the mysteries remind you that not everything needs to be solved, that uncertainty is not always threatening, that the unknown is not always dangerous, that you can live with open questions, that you can rest in ambiguity, that you can close your eyes and let the answers go and feel, instead of anxiety, peace. The world is full of mysteries, real ones, hard ones, the kind that keep you awake at 3 in the morning staring at the ceiling. But Avatar's mysteries are not those kind. The gentle kind, the kind that do not demand resolution, the kind that sit quietly in the corner of your mind and wait, patient and warm, like a friend who knows you will talk when you are ready and does not rush you. These mysteries are your companions tonight. They will walk with you into sleep. They will be there when you arrive on the other side, in the place where dreams begin and logic ends, and the rules of the waking world no longer apply. They will be there because they belong there, because the space between waking and sleeping is their natural habitat, because mysteries live in the threshold, in the in-between, in the place where things are almost clear but not quite, in the place where the light is dim and the edges are soft, and the world is gentle. The world of Avatar is gentle tonight. The iceberg is still. Ko is sleeping, or whatever spirits do instead of sleeping. Ursa is somewhere alive or dead or transformed, and you do not need to know where. The air nomads are gone, and their sky bison are not, and the contradiction is beautiful. Azula is wherever the story left her, and her pain is real even if she is not. And the mystery of her future is the mystery of all our futures, unknowable and unsolvable and absolutely certain to arrive, one way or another, eventually. The dragons are dancing in their cave, Iroh is drinking tea, Sokka's sword is in a forest, Kuruk is at rest, finally, after 900 years of being misunderstood. And Aang, the boy in the iceberg, the boy who should not have survived, the boy whose survival is the first and greatest mystery of the series, is awake. He is alive. He is 12 years old and 112 years old, and he is standing in a world that needs him, and he is ready. He was always ready. The universe knew it. The Avatar spirit knew it. The lion turtle knew it. The ice knew it. Everyone knew it except Aang. And by the time he knew it too, the war was over and the world was saved, and the mystery of why he was preserved was no longer a question, but a statement, a fact, a truth so deep that it did not need to be said. He was worth it. The world was worth it. You are worth it. And now the night is deep and the words are fading and the mysteries are settling into the quiet spaces of your mind, where they will stay patient and permanent, like stones at the bottom of a river, like stars behind clouds, like questions that do not need answers, because the asking is the answer, because the wondering is the point, because the mystery is not a problem to be solved, but a beauty to be witnessed. And you are witnessing it now, in the dark, with your eyes closed and your breathing slow, and the world getting quieter and quieter and quieter. There is a final thought that belongs here, in the space before the end. Avatar premiered on Nickelodeon on February 21st, 2005. Its target audience was children between 6 and 14 years old, and it gave those children a world full of unsolved mysteries, unexplained powers, vanished mothers, dead civilizations, corrupted spirits, and questions without answers. It did not simplify the world for them. It did not protect them from ambiguity. It did not pretend that every question has an answer, or that every story has a clean ending, or that every mystery can be solved if you just think hard enough. It trusted them. It trusted children to handle complexity, to sit with uncertainty, to find comfort in the unknown, rather than fear. And the children who watched the show in 2005 are adults now, in their 20s and 30s. And they are still carrying these mysteries, still debating them, still finding new layers, still discovering that the show they watched as children was deeper than they realized at the time. This is the show's final mystery. How did it do this? How did a cartoon on a children's network create a world so deep and so durable that it has sustained 20 years of analysis and devotion? How did 61 episodes contain enough depth to fill thousands of hours of discussion? How did a story about a 12-year-old boy saving the world become a meditation on grief, identity, transformation, sacrifice, and the nature of power that resonates across generations and cultures and languages? The answer, as with all the best mysteries, is that there is no single answer. It is the writing, it is the animation, it is the voice acting, it is the music, it is the martial arts choreography, it is the cultural research, it is the philosophical depth, it is the emotional honesty, it is the willingness to leave things unfinished. It is all of these things combined in proportions that cannot be measured, creating something that is greater than the sum of its parts. The show is a mystery. The world it built is a mystery. And these are the best kind of mysteries. The kind that make you glad you do not have the answers. The kind that make you grateful for the questions. In the final episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, Zuko walks into a prison cell and asks his father about his mother. The scene cuts away. The question goes unanswered. And 17 years later, the question is still alive, still open, still waiting. It will always be waiting. That is the nature of the best mysteries. They do not resolve. They resonate. They do not end. They echo. And the echo gets softer with time, but it never disappears because the walls it bounces off of are the walls of a world that was built to last, built with care and depth and love, built by people who understood that the most powerful thing a story can do is not answer your questions, but make you grateful that you had them. If you found something worth carrying away tonight, subscribing helps more than you would think. Thank you for staying. Sleep well. I will see you in the next one.